Hi everyone, today I'm gonna share some thoughts with you about the Fuji X-T20. It's a camera I bought about a week ago or two, I think. So I had a chance to shoot with it a little bit, and yeah, I'm gonna give you some opinions on it in the end. So as you can see, let's start with the review. As you can see, it has a retro look. Once I held the camera in my hand, I knew that I know this look from somewhere, and I picked this little thing up in my basement, brought it home. I'm actually at my parents' basement, and look at it. It's quite cool. Okay, so of course this is not an old camera. It's actually very, very new. As you can see, it turns itself on very, very quickly, and it's actually quite an advantage over, for an example, Sony cameras, which take a long time to turn on, and you know, they like turn off when you just walk around with it after a while. Just to show you. Oh, sorry. Right, and you have a photo. Something happens. Something interesting, you know, you want to catch the moment. It's really good, and it's a feature of all the Fuji cameras actually. Of course, the dials, you see, it's a standard for Fuji. Here you have a drive mode dial instead of a ISO dial like with X-T2. But you also have a touch screen, which on X-T2 you don't have. It actually is I don't find it as functional as it could be, because, for an example, on a Panasonic cameras or on Olympus cameras, you can just like drag the focus point, but here you can just only choose it like this, or you can choose the area, you can choose the focus, or you can choose shoot, right? But it's not really that functional. Also, you cannot use it when you put your eye to it. I don't know, there's supposed to be some kind of an update, but you really don't know. Regarding the X-Trans sensor and the Fuji system itself, I'm making some comparisons with the Sony. You can see them on my channel. To be honest, I find the photos, for an example, of landscapes, especially done in low light conditions, to indeed be a little bit wormy, as the people say. I also find the JPEGs that you make, if you make portraits in JPEGs in low light, the skin will look waxy. You can avoid it by simply shooting RAW, because it's some kind of a feature or a bug of the Fuji noise reduction algorithm. You here have a D-pad, but you don't have a joystick, which I really don't like. I just have my focusing here, and I'm just using the quick menu here to choose my the stuff I need. So you have a D-pad here, and the camera is actually, for me, as you can see, I have quite big hands. So if I take the camera, I really don't have a way to hold it comfortably with one hand. Just a second. Right, this is my Sony camera, and you can really hold it in one hand. You can operate the dials here. On the Fuji, of course, you have the aperture ring here, so one hand is, actually you can do it, but you see, if I hold it, I don't have the access to the focus. So actually, there is a way to avoid it. You can just buy the XE3, which I did. I'm returning this camera, and I'm going to be using the XE3. It's a little bit thicker. You have the EVF here, and the lens is a little bit to the side, so you have more space for your hand. Plus you have a joystick, which you can simply operate with a thumb. So it's much better in this way. I mean, there's just a dedicated drive button here, and you can choose all you need. Okay, what else about the camera itself? One thing you have to remember about this camera, that the feature that is available on XE3 and XT2 is you can shoot photos from the camera up to 15 minutes. So you can just set the timer, like I have here. As you can see, it goes only to 30 seconds. And on the XT2 and XT3, you can shoot without any sort of remote controls, without cables, without anything, just with the camera up to 15 minutes. So this is quite a nice feature. Regarding night photography, it's actually very, very good at this. It's quite strange for me because it seems like you need less light to get the proper exposure than on my Sony. So I found myself just shooting at night on the streets, just handheld photos, and they actually came out pretty well. ISO 1600, so you can see some noise, but other than that the photo is quite nice. And actually, if you shoot long exposure photos, I only tried it up to 30 seconds, it actually processes them quite fast. So this was my main problem with the Sony camera, that when you shoot at night, if you go even the 30 seconds, it just, you know, the camera just gets locked. You cannot do anything with it, and it grinds the file for like a minute or something. Fuji is much faster in that. So, of course, you have all the Fujifilm simulations, which you can either use them in JPEGs, or you can shoot RAW and add them in Adobe Lightroom. Actually, the effects are not exactly the same, but to be honest, if you add a little bit contrast and play with the shadows, you can really replicate the more or less, of course. The one thing you cannot replicate is the JPEG sharpness of Fuji. They have some sort of sharpening algorithm in the camera, and really Lightroom is much worse in sharpening those photos than the Fuji camera. So this one, as well as any other X-Trans Fuji camera. You have a pop-up flash on it, so you can use it to, you know, control the other flashes. I actually use it to control my Nissan flashes that are dedicated for Sony. So it works quite well. For an example, with Olympus cameras, I couldn't do it, but with this one, I can just, you know, operate Sony flashes and Nissan flashes that are made for Sony. Actually, you see, when you fold it, it folds down, which I don't like, because, for an example, on the Sony A6000 and other 6X series, so to say, it folds up. So actually, when you fold it halfway with your finger, you can bounce the flash off the ceiling. It's actually quite useful. Here you cannot do it. You can just point it straight ahead, so it's not really that useful. Also, when I use other flashes, when I don't want the front light, I just have to, you know, cover it a little bit and shoot it in a way of the other light. Okay, so as you can see, it's very compact, very small. Actually, when it comes to street photography, previously I was using my Sony for that, and it's really heavy, and it's not that operative when you just walk around and want to shoot something. This is much better for that, especially if you have a prime lens, which I don't have, because I ordered my X-T3 with a prime lens, so I will have that, and I'm gonna leave the lens, I think, and just sell the body. Okay, so this is also, the EVF is quite dark. It's much darker than with the X-T2, and also darker than with my Sony. And also, what you have to remember is that the screen is also not super quality. So it's a little bit dark. Both X-E3 and X-T2 have better screens. It's quite dark, and actually when I first took the camera and started shooting with it, I was pretty disappointed with the image quality, because I was viewing the photos here on the screen. But when I took the card and put it in my computer, they were much better. So really, Fuji, you could do a better job with the screen. I don't know why it's like this. Otherwise, the photos are pretty good quality. You can see the difference between this and full frame, even as old as A7 Mark II. But you know, it's the APS-C sensor, so probably the better comparison would be with the A6000, A6300 or A6000. If you are looking for a small camera, I would really advise you to buy this one, because it is small, it is compact, and the quality is really good, both build quality and image quality. But if you have big hands like me, it's really, as you can see here, it's really hard to handle it properly. I don't know. I found this way, but it also has the edges here, so your fingers hurt after a bit. Okay, so this is it. Hope you got some information from this video, and see you next time.